some reason, I only see half of that slide.
Can other participants just help me out here? Are you able to see the full presentation or not?
I can see the full presentation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can too.
Okay,
What's
Katharine.
happening with me?
Okay. See, Wilmi has joined us. I'm glad.
Yeah, I made it.
We're worried about you.
Sorry about that, people. For some or odd reason, my computer didn't want to work, but I've got a co-worker's computer. I'm ready.
Okay, not a problem. I mean, Lauren October, who arranged this webinar on behalf of Savvy and SaferSpaces, who never has a problem with Teams, is having a problem with Teams at the moment. So I think it's a temperamental Friday. So yeah, so maybe let's get started. Amongst Katharine, Wilmi, and Blanche, who's going to start? And do you want to start? I know, Katharine, you can't see your presentation properly, but maybe if you read your presentation from your computer, and then you just tell me when I need to change slides.
All
and
right,
I will have to change slides. And just tell me who's going to start. But maybe before we start, just to say welcome to everybody. This is the third webinar we're running for SaferSpaces, which is on. Okay, someone's just asking for presentations to be emailed. If the presenters are okay with that, we can certainly email them. But just to say welcome to everybody. This is the third webinar within the SaferSpaces series on increasing safety, improving safety and security within South Africa. We've had a number of webinars that have looked, for example, at technology and safety. We've looked at the role of designing in community safety. And today we're looking at parenting programs for a safer South Africa. So we have a number of really interesting and innovative programs that have been happening in South Africa. So we have 3 speakers that work within the sector. They do the work of parenting. And I think they've got some really interesting things to say. So without any further ado, I'm going to kick this webinar off. So Katharine, between Katharine, Blanche, and Wilmi, if you can just indicate who's going to speak first, second, and then third, and then I'm going to hand it over to you, and then we're going to have time at the end for any questions or comments. So who would like to kick off first?
Guy, I'll be starting. I'll really just provide an introduction to everybody, and we really are going to need your help. So thank you for facilitating.
Sure.
I will just tell you when we need to then move over to Wilmi's presentation, and at the end of hers, we'll need to go back to the remaining slides of this one.
Okay, not a problem at all. So just tell me when I need to change slides.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to you, Guy, and to SaferSpaces for including us in this this really important series of webinars around violence prevention. And we're very pleased to represent SAPN, that's Blanche, Rezant, Wilmi, Dippenaar, and myself. We are each leaders in our organizations, Blanche from the Parent Centre in Cape Town, Wilmi from 7 Passes Initiative in George, and me, I'm the head of the Ububele Educational and Psychotherapy Trust in Johannesburg. So Guy, if we can go to the next slide, please. This really is a simple message. And the strength and cohesiveness of societies rests largely on the strength of the families. And this is a really simple but very powerful statement made by Ban Ki-moon, former UN Secretary General. Next slide, please, Guy. So good parenting, positive parenting has widespread positive effects, and we're going to go into detail with some of these, particularly Wilmi's presentation a bit later, on what the evidence is showing us within this context. But evidence-based positive parenting programs show that have an effect on youth staying in school, youth employability, less likelihood of youth to make use of drugs and alcohol, reduction of youth violence, and reduced child maltreatment. Next slide, please, Guy. What is evidence-based? This is what we've really grappled with at the SAPN, our parenting network, and we're having a research workshop actually in March on really fleshing this out. What does evidence-based, led and informed practice mean? For us, it means it's informed by theory that supports positive change. The parenting programs that we're going to be talking about today are influenced by, theoretically informed by attachment theory, reflective functioning, and it's linked to positive attachment, affect regulation, cognitive social learning theory. And importantly for our context, our parenting interventions have all endeavored to be contextually sensitive, relevant, and have been tested in local settings. Next slide, please, Guy. And at the core of our parenting programs that we'll be sharing with you today is the focus on strengthening relationships between caregivers and children, increasing parenting skills, and we'll talk specifically about communication and praise, and parenting confidence, improving positive parent behavior, such as including special time into the crazy routine of an ordinary day, decreasing harsh discipline by providing alternatives, increasing levels of support, and ultimately to improve mental health. Next slide, please, Guy. We have shared facilitation principles in our parenting programs. Our parenting groups make use of a group process, and this really facilitates the feeling of sharing a burden, such as this quote suggests. I feel contained in a group that lets me speak my mind and hears me, and I feel not alone. There's a philosophy of the parent being the expert on their own child. All of the parenting interventions we'll be discussing have an experiential self-reflective activity with psychoeducation and plenty of opportunities to practice these between sessions. Next slide, please, Guy. So who is SAPN? Blanche, Wilmi, and I are the driver group members of the South African Parenting Program Implementers Network. We have our roots in the Violence Prevention Forum that hopefully some of you will be familiar with. For those of you that aren't, this is a really unique gathering of representatives from national and local government, civil society, and researchers. And we represent some of the civil society NGO organizations involved in violence prevention through parenting programs. And we formed ourselves into a network national footprint. We share that we are all implementers of parenting programs, and each member that joins our SAPN network shares and commits to a set of principles. Thereby we can ensure confidence between each other and other stakeholders regarding our separate entities and the quality of the programs that we deliver. Next slide, please, Guy. And some of the parenting programs within the SAPN network of organizations, and some of these will be spoken about today, the Tulisana program from pregnancy to 6 months, the baby blanket program for younger children going until 6 years, the Sinovoyo parenting programs for kids and teens. Those really are the ones we'll be focusing on today, but there are others that are backed by evidence, such as the International Child Development Program, Circle of Security Parenting, Parent Effectiveness Training, and Parent Skills Training. Okay, so at that point and with that introduction, I'm really going to hand over to Wilmi Dippenaar from the Seven Passes Initiative to take you through some of their exciting evidence that they've been able to generate from their parenting programs in Toosranten.
Thank you very much, Katharine. I appreciate that. I'm wondering, Guy, do you have the other presentation? Otherwise, if I can maybe share my screen with everybody.
I have it, but maybe it's easier if you share it. So let me unshare mine and then you share it. But if you're having problems, just let me know because I do have a copy. It'd just be easier if you can then move it backwards and forwards. So I'm unsharing now. Stop presenting.
Okay, just
1 second. Okay. Are you
guide
able
me through the process of sharing, please?
I beg your pardon?
Just guide me through the process of sharing.
Okay.
Do I just share it like? Yeah.
Okay, let me just share it. That'll be the easiest way to do it. So then you just need to tell me which slide you want me to do. Okay, 1 second. Let me upload it quickly. Okay, it's uploading.
Thank you so much.
It's just going to take a few more seconds. Right. Is this the correct slides for me?
I can't see anything yet. Let's just give it. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Just tell me when you want me to move ahead.
I hope I can remember, otherwise we'll figure it out.
That's fine. I'll follow along.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Guy. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you from my side to be able to be here with you today as well. Before I start with our research project, I would just like to add on to what Katharine was saying about the SAPN group. Another aspect of the SAPN group that is important for violence prevention. When we formed in 2018, we realized that we as implementers have a wealth of knowledge that needs to be utilized, but we don't always know how. And one of the new interesting research fields that we have embarked on is implementation research. Now, I don't know who of you knows Fixon, who wrote the famous implementation synthesis of the literature. But according to that, implementation research is a plan to apply a program or activity with a measurable extent through a set of specific activities. So within our network, we are focusing on implementation research, including factors that affect the implementation of programs. These factors entails aspects outside of the specific program content, such as staff selection, things like ongoing consultation, supervision, pre and in-service training, and program and staff evaluation, to name but a few. So implementation research is one of the ways that we can improve the quality of the services that NPOs deliver. And it also gives our network the opportunity to do our own research and our own of our own programs, and to do combined research together, thus creating national evidence and the possibility to upscale the current evidence-based programs. I just wanted to add that to some of what is important to the group. So, one illustration of the power of parenting programs as violence prevention measures. I think you can click the next slide. Yes, thank you. So during 2016 to 2019, the 7 Passes Initiative, the University of Cape Town and the Institute for Security Studies conducted a research study in the Toos-Ranton community. We're a rural community about 30 kilometers from George. So we deliver 4 parenting programs together with a social activation process, with the aim to achieve a shift in a whole population's parenting style from a harsh negative to a more softer positive style. Next one, please, Guy. So the intervention consisted of 3 waves where door-to-door visits were done, and 1 parent per household with 1 child in the house were interviewed, and then children of the same households between the ages of 10 and 18 were also interviewed. And there were also interactions between babies and the caregivers were filmed. The next one, please. So, and the next one. The parenting programs, Katharine sort of touched on it, are the 4 PLH parenting programs. PLH is the Parenting for Lifelong Health parenting programs. And the first, these programs cover the lifespan of a child, and a lot of research has been done on these 4 programs. So the first program is widely known as the Tulasana, and Blanche will tell us more about that, but in our community we call it the Mama Baba program. The second program is book sharing, or pictures. It has been evaluated in Khayelitsha by the Mikulu Trust, and it was found that it increased children's concentration and their vocabulary, especially their emotional vocabulary. Prentepret prepares the child for school. It might even help them in later years to better articulate emotions and how to learn to address challenges without violence. So the third program is the Sinevuyu Kids program. In our community, we call it Gelukkige Familie Omgee program. And Katharine also referred to that. This program is about 4 things: spending special time with your child, creating reasonable house rules with non-violent consequences, techniques for handling emotions such as cool down for the child, but also for the caregiver, and learning ways to deal with difficult behavior that doesn't include spanking. In our community, we refer to it as growing a tree of support for the family. Sinevuyu Teens, or the Gelukkige Familie Omgee program vir tieners, basically follows the same principles as the kids program, but with the teens, the teenager attends the session with the caregiver. And they also learn how to negotiate rules, how to save and budget as a family, and how to talk about different emotions. Next slide, please. There's two of our parents doing book sharing with their lovely children. Thanks, next one. So as I said, the research was combined with the parenting programs with the social activation process. Next one, please, Guy. The social activation process started with an action media campaign or workshop that was held in February 2016, consisting of randomly chosen parents from the community. And out of them, a committee was established. And they created a logo, a manifesto, 2 songs that were recorded and played on local radio stations. And everywhere in the community, I don't know if you can see those pictures, but they've got the logo on the T-shirt. And everywhere you go in the community, you can see houses with stickers on, with the logo on, so that parents can associate with the principles of the group and of positive parenting. But whenever somebody joins the group, or if a parent finishes one of the parenting programs, they receive a T-shirt and a sticker with the logo on. So since then, we've had about 5 workshops. And currently the membership is about 25 members, and they do lots of activities in the community. Next slide, please, Guy. Oh, there you can see most often there would be different street cleanups, or we have repairing of the playbook, so different things that the group gets up to. They're very busy. Okay, next one, please. And there's just our beautiful children dancing with one of our facilitators. Next slide, please. So the survey that we used for the 3 waves consisted of the following measuring tools and took approximately 2 hours to complete. So it was really a heavy questionnaire for parents to fill in, but covered different aspects. Next one, please. And the next one. For anybody who are interested, we can definitely share the full presentation that we have. I just took different slides out of that to just try and give you an idea of the violence prevention, well, the evidence for that. So this is just the summary of that. So the sample that we worked with that was consistent through the 3 waves with 257 people. Maybe the next one, please. So what we found was that unemployment was critical in our community. In the 3rd wave, you can see that the unemployment went down because one of the major roads were rebuilt and the people received temporary contract positions. But we fear that our employment right now is higher than ever because of the effects of COVID. So a significant number of people from our community work in the hospitality industry in the well-known Holiday Village Wilderness. And they, with international travel being something of the past, many people are without work. Next slide, please. Again, as you can see, a lot of families rely on social grants. Next one, please. In our questionnaires, we've also asked questions about intimate partner violence and found that 35% of respondents in a relationship in baseline experienced some form of violence in the relationship. By the third wave, the violence came down with 41%. We unfortunately don't have the evidence for the reduction in intimate partner violence, but we would love to believe that the principles of the parenting programs may changes or help support changes in household where there is a lot of violence. Next one, please. What we do know is that parents stress less about parenting, and that influences their relationship with their children. So from wave 1 to wave 3, there was a decrease of 20% in parenting stress. Next slide, please. The percentage of caregivers that fall into the clinically stressed range decreased from baseline, that was 14%. In wave 2 was 5.5%, and in wave 3 it was 4.7%. Next one, please. So when we look at alcohol and again the psychological support, the percentage of caregivers that reported using risky levels of alcohol and therefore fell into the high-risk category, which is associated with difficulty in parenting, was 20.2% in wave 1 and decreased to 18.7 in wave 2 and 18.3 in wave 3. Importantly, focus group discussions during previous surveys indicated that the caregivers were likely to underreport their alcohol usage. When we look at the psychiatric morbidity, the percentage of caregivers who obtained scores greater than 4, qualifying them for having clinically relevant psychiatric morbidity, were 20.2 at the baseline. It went up in wave 2 and then came down to 20.9 in wave 3. So the scores of the general health questionnaire measuring psychiatric morbidity increased from 0.15% from 3.6% to wave. Slide, please. What do we know about the children? The next one, please. When we look at changes that occurred for children in the community, it's conspicuous that the overall mental health of children in the younger age group improved. Next slide, please. And the younger age group is children aged 1 to 5 years, the older age 6 months. So for the age group, you need to have significant age group. Next slide, please.
Wilmi, if you can just drop your camera because we're struggling to hear you a bit. So maybe your sound quality will improve if you just turn your camera off, if you don't mind.
Okay, no, of course. Let me just find this. There we go.
Okay, you're sounding much better. Over to you. Back to you. And
it's more important to hear me than see me, of course. So we can see through this evidence that I just show you, that the following aspects described in research influence children's internalizing and externalizing behavior. Things like stress of parenting, parents' mental health, parents' exposure to intimate partner violence, yelling and screaming, spanking and hitting, alcohol misuse, and less positive parenting and involvement. Next slide, please. And the next one. So we've seen that parenting programs can help parents to be less stressed. Parents who are less stressed can have a good relationship with their children, and children who have good relationships with their parents can realize their potential. The next one, please. The main outcome of interest for the intervention was the parenting summary statistics. That is a measure of the overall parenting behavior. This showed that parenting at baseline was typical of the caregivers interviewed in the community as a whole. Parenting in the analytic sample became more positive in wave 2, although not significantly so, but parenting in the analytic sample was even more positive at wave 3. This time representing a significant improvement from wave 1 scores. The subscales that make up the Alabama Parenting Questionnaire and Parenting Young Children scales total parenting score assessed across all 3 waves of data collection. But as I said before, everything cannot unfortunately be discussed here. Next slide, please. I still have to give Blanche a chance. So the total of the Alabama Parenting Questionnaire subscale showed that parenting behavior of caregivers with children in the older age group in the analytic sample improved by only 2.49%. And the possible reasons for the relatively stable responses of caregivers with children in the older groups might be, one, that the scores at baseline were already high to begin with. 2, that fewer parenting programs were aimed at caregivers with children in the older age group. And 3, that children in this age group are less receptive to changes their primary caregivers are implementing at home. Next slide, please. The scores measuring the extent to which caregivers set limits and support positive behavior also increased steadily. Next slide, please. So the scores of the Corporal Punishment subscale decreased by 16.92% from baseline and also decreased by 16.92% from baseline to wave 3. The Corporal Punishment subscale is comprised of slapping, belting, and spanking. Reductions in the amount of spanking reported has contributed significantly to the overall drop in corporal punishment across the 3 waves. Next slide, please. So we have hundreds and hundreds of success stories that confirms the research that I just shared with you of families whose lives are changed forever. But I know it's Friday afternoon, and I will therefore end with the story of Jason Boyson and his 8-year-old stepdaughter, Brondavisha Kennedy. They were very grateful for the 2 to 9 program that they attended, the Sinevuyo Kids 2 to 9. According to Jason, their relationship was very unpleasant before they attended. He was struggling to gain Brondavisha's trust, and she was disobedient towards him. He used corporal punishment on a regular basis. Since they learned new skills in the parenting program, they've started spending special time together. Her attitude towards him changed completely. She follows instructions, and he always praises and rewards her when she behaves well. He is very happy about the house rules, and whenever she refuses to obey it, he gives her a consequence. Jason says Brondavisha doesn't need the 5-minute cool down much anymore, but when they do have to use it, it definitely works. Thank you very much. That's it from me.
Thanks so much, Wilmi. Are we going to hand over to Blanche now, Katharine? Should I reload the previous presentation?
Yeah, please reload that, Guy. And if you can go back to that slide where I said switch to Wilmi's slide, and Blanche will take over from the slide that comes after that one.
Just give me a second to upload quickly. Okay, let me just through here. Is that the slide you want me to start?
That's right.
Fantastic. So thank you so much. Handing over to Blanche Rezant. Blanche, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then you can enter into your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Guy. Thank you very much for this opportunity once again to have SAPN here. I think my task is to emphasize, you'll see on Wilmi's slides as part of the evidence, is that there was a significant increase in the ages 1 to 5 because there was some focused attention within a period that we see as very critical. And it's something I want to outline in terms of parenting programs. We believe with our parenting programs that there needs to be life course work done. So from conception right through the life course of a child. And we want to emphasize on how critical it is to prevent violence by focusing in on the first 1,000 days. As we are doing so aptly within the Western Cape, we need to be looking at parenting programs that is able to support that objective and agenda. So you'll see in front of you, I actually have some of the sustainable development goals that really says in the first few years of life, parents, the intimate family members, they are best, the best providers of that nurturing care, which is why family-centered care is most important. So engagement between parents and their young child expressed before speech develops through cuddling, eye contact, smiles, vocalization, gestures, and it is the engine that propels the brain development. So I've always wondered, we've heard many presentations around the nurturing care framework and why that is important. And we're going to share with you through our slides, the next few slides, why that is so important when it's put into practice. Because many times there's almost a level of the underestimating the value of that close connection and contact with an infant from conception. Whether it's during home visiting programs, support within communities, book sharing program, the baby mat project, the baby blanket project with Dlalanati, all of these organizations form part of SAPN, and that's why we say we have shared principles around what works to prevent violence. You can go to the next slide, Guy. So there are many factors that I think it's helpful to understand why it's important to work as early as from conception to, well, the first 2 years of a child's life. I've got a slide in front of me, and within South Africa, we find that there are high levels of stress. Within the world at the moment with the current pandemic, there are high levels of stress. And so we've actually found that brain development actually takes place and it's optimal around this time. So if you look on the picture, normal brain development of a 3-year-old child versus a child who's experienced extreme neglect, you will actually see there's quite a significant difference. Why is that? So what we've actually found is that the first 1,000 days provides a critical period where the body physiologically will adapt to the surroundings. So if there is a high stress, high violence within a home, within a community, experienced by the mother, the child would automatically take that on, and it actually starts transforming, changing the physical aspects, the biophysical aspects of the child. So this for us is actually important to note that it's not just, I cannot see that change. The child looks fine, so let's move on. We're actually seeing that that has huge implications further on, later on in life. You can move to the next slide, please. So what you see in front of you here is actually just a diagrammatical illustration of the first 1,000 days by Moore et al. In 2017, which actually speaks about the life course work of working with a child. You can actually see that it is important for optimal development, for children to thrive it's important to give input into aspects of nutrition, to give the aspects of responsive caregiving. So all of those aspects in the nurturing care framework is important. All of those components are important in order to ensure that you are getting healthy, safer, and more secure individuals within society at a later stage. You can move forward with that. So what we are seeing with our parenting programs, that we need to have targeted approaches which focus on individuals or communities at risk of later problems because of factors such as poverty, undernutrition, adolescent pregnancies, and exposure to HIV, violence, displacement, and humanitarian emergencies. So the aim of focusing early is to reduce the chance of problems developing later by strengthening individual capacities to cope, as well as the provision of extra support. So families and caregivers at risk need additional contact with a trained provider in facilities, communities, or within their home. So they may also require additional resources such as health insurance or financial benefits, which comes in the form of maybe the support grant, child support grant, which all of these factors actually fit well together. I want to focus in specifically on that. Sometimes the best way to work within our communities is actually to focus in on our home visiting. So we've got quite a few home visiting programs that really support the development of the bond, the connection, the sensitivity that happens between the primary caregiver and the child. So home visiting programs targeting families and young children in households. There are lots of community-based participatory groups for risk caregivers. Then affordable childcare. That's also something that's important, because what we have found is in many of our parenting skills training, there's the high success rate of parenting skills training groups is whether there is additional childcare support as part of a basket of services. So mom will come to that program if she at least knows and is secure in her mind that baby is taken care of. So can I come with my child? Can I not? So those kind of logistics we've been sharing and really strengthens implementation in terms of that. So I just wanted to share some of the key messages. The social and environmental conditions in which families are conceiving and raising children have a direct impact on children's development. So developmental plasticity is at its greatest during the first 1,000 days. While experiences during the first 1,000 days does have profound and lasting effects, it is never too late. So that's why we talk about the life course work, to make changes and improve the health and well-being of children. So optimizing early childhood development requires an integrated and holistic approach to policy, programs, and services. So you can move to the next slide, please, Guy. So I wanted to maybe just touch base on two interventions that is within this first 1,000 day space. I'm not going to give you too much information. I'll give you some where you can find some of the readings. I'm sure many of you know of where to find this. So there's the Tulasana home visiting intervention for mothers with young infants. It's a home visiting intervention. There's an intervention as well within Ububele that really focuses on the training of why this is important to do this intervention, to engage in sensitive and responsive interactions between the mother and their infants. The intervention is targeted at pregnant women and then their infant age 0 to 2 from low resource environments. You can move to the next slide. So the program delivery is delivered to mothers through home visits within the comfort of their own home. Trained community health workers visit moms about twice during their pregnancy and then weekly after baby is born, and then at intervals in terms for follow-up to find out how things are going, what's been happening. The most thing, you'll see a picture there by one of the originators of the Tulasana, which is Dr. Mireille Landman, and she's worked extensively and still continues to work with the Parent Center in Cape Town, really on trying to see how we can make sure that the Tulasana fits into the context, the cultural context, the communities that they are currently still serving after 20 years plus doing this program. You can do to the next slide. What I wanted to also just touch on before I go over to the next program is with programs like the Tulasana, lessons learned are quite important in terms of implementation within communities. We found that sometimes you can have a program and implement and talk about scale up and engage in a lot of conversations when there's actually some elements of the program that we don't detail quite clearly. And I think one of the principles that the SAPN membership have also almost pride themselves on agreeing to is that supervision actually for all program staff is vital. Reflective supervision, so that they are able to implement the program in a coherent way, in a sensitive manner. And it's almost a role modeling of, if you are wanting to hold the client, hold the family, that employee as well also gets held by the organization. Change is possible, even in difficult circumstances. So that's, our clients often surprised us. And then you cannot work in isolation. So therefore the need for networking, the need for actually engaging with other role players and partners is critical. Ongoing training is vital. And then cultural and context adaptation is necessary in order to make a program work within communities. What you see in front of you is from Dlalanati. Linda and Rachel are part of SAPN as well, and we found that it was important to share this beautiful resource of this program, which was established home-based weekly neighborhood play and learning groups for caregivers with their children under 5, and enable caregiver groups to facilitate this learning play process independently and as a group, using skills learned to increase playful learning for their children when home. So what we found with these projects, it's been very important and quite critical during a time like COVID, where they weren't able to go to a facility, when the parent actually became that resource, that wealth. And so being in a supportive program like that almost creates that empowerment for parents. So this Play Mat project is it's the symbolism around this large, colorful blanket made from fleece with a waterproof base, and each participant receives one, and then the metaphor of the play relationship and learning together in the home is promoted. So one of the comments was, it is a way for children to say, I am ready to play and I'm ready to learn with you. And the almost the Zulu word is Ibaya Lengani, which means the baby blanket. That symbol of being protected, that symbol of security is really created in this intervention, working together with parents. Can we move forward, Guy? So I was wondering, how can I share the uniqueness of this program? This program is home-based, and I really want to emphasize that the research actually shows more and more that programs that rather go to the homes of parents are more successful, because there are limiting factors for getting parents to come into facilities, to come and take transport, to come out and join spaces. Whereas if they are able to do that in their own home, there are many factors, childcare being their own space, meeting in their own comfort. That also plays an active role as well. So that increases also the capacity to learn and play for parents. It combines parenting principles with play for development, stimulation, and learning. It combines group sessions with home visits to strengthen application for learning beyond the group sessions into the home. So this program also addresses the challenge of space to play. So by using the play mat, you can actually see in some homes where infrastructure, they don't have the physical space to play, but the mat creates a space in order for a parent to put that down and actually say to the child, this is our moment now, this is what we're going to do together. And it almost for me felt as if it's a space of teleporting into a world of our own where we learn, play, and we grow. So this is how beautiful this program is. Its sustainability is also based on establishing the neighborhood and caregiver driver households routine and intentionally invite children under 5 to learn and play. So it's that Ubuntu nature coming back. How can we then, my child is your child, how can we play and learn together so that we are stimulating, growing brain development, encouraging language development. We're doing all of those things and in the language that a child understands, which is play. Can you go to the next slide, please, Guy? I'll give over to Katharine. Katharine, do you want to share a little bit about one of this? This is one of the groups that happened at Ububele.
Yeah, I do want to emphasize that there's a growing focus on involving fathers, and there's a focus on fathers groups at many of the organizations within the SAPN network. So that's an image of that. And really, to the next slide, please, Guy. The next image is really of one of the Ububele early childhood community practitioners accessing parents where parents are already spending time. And I think that's very much in the theme of what Blanche is saying about making parenting support available to parents so that we don't require them to catch a taxi and access center-based institutions. This is Florence at Ububele, who's doing an introductory talk to the group of moms awaiting their immunization before she puts her baby mat down and offers some parenting consultation at a primary healthcare clinic. Next slide, please, Guy. So in all aspects of our work at SAPN, we have made adaptations of theory and practice for our clinical work in our context with the children and families that we see. The training and resourcing of mental health practitioners from the cultural context of the work, so home visitors, community workers, early childhood community practitioners. There's an emphasis on, and it's a criteria to be a member of the SAPN network, is cultural sensitivity. And parenting in our context, where we often find the realities of parenting here are often characterized by high levels of toxic stress. And that is the conclusion of our SAPN presentation. That's, yeah, Wilmi, Blanche, myself, our details. Please contact us should you want further information, and we can absolutely make the presentations available.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Wilmi, Katharine, and Blanche. There were 3 excellent presentations. I mean, I do follow the parenting programs and the parenting literature, but I learned quite a bit just from listening to this presentation. So incredibly informative. And thank you so much. And also thank you for agreeing to share the PowerPoint presentations. I'm going to send them to Lauren and ask if she can send them out because she's got everyone's who accepted the invitations. So if you just don't mind being just waiting for that, it might be a bit later today. But without any further ado, I'd really like to open the session for comments and questions. We have around 25 minutes. So if you can please use the raise hand function there. It should be available to you in your control panel for those who want to ask questions. And I suggest we take a few questions and then we hand it back to Katharine, Wilmi, and Blanche to respond. But yeah, so let's take as many questions as we can. So it's open for questions. Please raise your hands. And also lots of very positive comments coming in the chat. So if you want to any of the speakers want to refer to that as well, please feel welcome. But yes, comments or questions, it's open. If you're struggling to raise your hand, which is sometimes an issue with Microsoft Teams, please just turn your mic on and speak. No one wants to be first.
I think Melanie raised the question of how you can bring this to a scale in the chat, but I also see Gwen's hand up.
We'll come back to that one. So Gwen, your hand is up. Over to you.
Thank you, Guy, and yeah, thank you to Wilmi, Blanche, and Katharine, and overall, thank you to all the parenting practitioners for really driving evidence-based parenting programs and their link to violence prevention. So my name is Gwen Derrymaker. I work for the Western Cape Government in the Central Policy Unit. I work on safety, and I'm trying to embed evidence-based violence prevention programs in the Western Cape Government approach to safety. Parenting being one of my major focus areas at the moment. And so my question is a bit of an open question, but how has your relationship been overall? And I mean, this can be a very sensitive question, so I'll let you answer the best way you think. But I'm trying to understand the relationship between government and parenting program and parenting practitioners, and especially those who are trying to lead more evidence-based programs, and whether you've got any recommendations or inputs in terms of how that could be improved.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thank you, Gwen. I don't see any other hands at the moment, so maybe if I can hand over to the speakers if you want to respond to Gwen's question. And also, if you are asking questions in the chat, if you can put your hand up, it's just easier to facilitate a conversation if you do put your hand up and you can actually ask your question in person, because if it appears in the chat, we might not get to it. So over to the three speakers. How would you like to respond to this? Blanche, do you want to respond first, or Katharine, or Wilmi?
I wonder if I could just start off. What you'll see, Guy, is with SAPN over the past few years, we've actually developed this opportunity to kind of finish off each other's train of thought, which has been very helpful. So I'll start off, and then Katharine and Wilmi will just add where I leave off. So I think just thank you for that question, Gwen. I think what's been, like you say, it can be sensitive, but I think it's better to be upfront about challenges, I think, that we've had. Many, as you know, as Katharine shared, many of the organizations are NGOs. And so rooted within that is how funding really does put a damper on, for an entire organization, on a intervention that really works, supporting parents that is vital in communities. However, many of the NGOs are closing. And we are finding that our basket of services for referral is decreasing, and valuable services that we've prided on sharing with parents and saying, can you go to this program, this really good program at Mosaic, while you're in this program, there's that program, and being able to strengthen their resources. But many of our programs within organizations are decreasing, and I'm not sure if there's an understanding really of maybe how NPOs are structuring funding, funding sometimes post-specific. So if one person can just do that entire program, sometimes that program is not even run in that way within an organization, within an NGO. So a home visiting program has home visitors who are not probably social service professions and is not able to be allocated a social work salary, which is in a particular budget. So therefore funding has to be sought elsewhere for that particular HR line item. So I'm speaking nitty-gritties of the NGO sector at the moment, but sometimes that does affect the relationship of how long a program is able to run, how you think of almost the life of this program going forward. How do we scale up? What do we do? And I mean, I'll ask Wilmi and Katharine to share some of our thinking around scale up, the word scale up, and we engaged on that as well, and really talking to that and what are the limitations, pros and cons of that as well. But I really want to emphasize that NGOs are really in a space where we're really needing to think creatively, differently. And I think within SAPN, we've done that. We've not just said, please give us the money. it is an opportunity to say, what do we need to do? We also need to raise our game. We also need to say, let's do some implementation research. Let's look at opportunities to share the learnings and lessons that we've learned implementing in organizations 50 years plus, and see how that grows other interventions as well, and strengthen that within communities. I'm not sure, Wilmi or Katharine, do you have anything else to add?
I would like to add something. Thank you, Gwen, for that, and thank you for attending. I think we've definitely seen a shift in government in the last couple of years, where it's as if government is more interested in evidence-based and more interested in collaborating. It's as if government acknowledges the knowledge of the civil society sector. So I think, yes, it's open to conversation, and I think that is exactly what we need to do. If we want to take this further and upscale, we need to have more conversations around how can we make it available to more people in more communities. Those are my 2 cents.
I don't really have very much to add to that, Guy. I agree. Thank you, Gwen, for coming and attending today's webinar. I think the part of the rationale for us to become a network was to strengthen our voice, and we have certainly engaged in conversations. I had an important discussion on behalf of SAPN with Department of Basic Education, where they are there's a mandate from the President's office to integrate parenting programs into schools. So I agree with both Wilmi and Blanche. From Blanche's perspective, from a funding side, I think strength in numbers for us, so our voice can be heard. And from Wilmi's side, I think we are beginning a conversation with government. The implementation thereof, we're waiting to see.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think you've attended to some of the questions that were asked, but it's maybe if you can, any of you can expand on it. Melanie Dugmore's questions and Terence Smith's questions were around about how do you scale it up. So you're doing some excellent work. You've shown that it's working in a number of contexts, but it's the sense of around, is there, what kind of strategy can one follow here to try and get it a bit more embedded within the mainstream? And the second question is funding. Is this something that realistically one can try and get funding out of the South African government, or is this something that's going to have to be externally funded? I'm not sure if anybody else has any questions. I'm just kind of flagging questions that are sitting in the chat bar. But if anybody else has questions, please do raise your hand so that we can have a conversation. I don't see any hands. Wait, I do. Melanie, do you want to pose your question or additional questions? Over to you.
Hi, yes, thank you. It's really exciting and very promising, and it seems there is a receptiveness by government. Just in terms of some of the work that I have been doing, and some people have been on our earlier workshop this morning or consultation, it's really trying to embed a evidence-based approach, in government, in terms of the type of interventions and programs that are being funded both at the municipal level or the provincial level. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that. And then something else that came out of our discussion this morning was a comment or criticism really on some of government's policies, that in many cases they're very Western focused and Eurocentric, and how are we really looking? I saw in your presentation earlier, Katharine, you spoke about contextualizing and cultural sensitivity, but I was wondering, particularly in contexts where you're working with traditional leaders, and my question was, if you've had, how difficult is it to challenge some social norms that you may encounter which are prevalent in certain communities? And then just to ask you if you've got some example of working in very deep rural areas where there are vast distances, how does one roll out or begin to engage in parenting programs where the distances are so great, particularly for when working with babies or under 1,000 days, where people may not necessarily be accessing ECD services and stuff like that. So I'd really like to hear your thoughts on those. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. It's quite kind of interesting questions there. So I'm going to hand back to the speakers to respond to those questions. If anybody else has questions, please raise your hands and we will give you an opportunity as well. So I'm not sure what one of the three speakers wants to kick off.
I'll give it a bash. I think the Sinuvuyo parenting program is a really excellent example of adaptation to context. So this is a parenting intervention. The base of it was an international parenting intervention with evidence from weird countries, Western, industrialized, rich, democratic. But it's been over a long period of time, it's been adapted, and with Clowns Without Borders and UCT, and it's been amended so that it is culturally sensitive. And even in the Toast-Ranton area, Wilmi can speak to how even within that context, it's been further adapted to the specifics of that context. So, and the research has followed it. So I think Sinuvuyo is an excellent example of an intervention such as that one. I think the network of parenting implementers, it consists of different organizations. For example, Ububele in Johannesburg is a small local parenting organization. I'm not sure that we have any intention to take our programs to scale. We offer quality programs within Alexandra Township. There are 500,000 people there. We're going to be busy there for a long time. There are other implementing partners within the SAPN network, such as Clowns Without Borders, who, through support from UNICEF and other funders, are replicating, taking the parenting programs into rural areas. And as far as I know, they have done that most extensively within our network. Yeah, so there is examples of taking the programs into more rural areas. And certainly Makulu Trust has, with the book sharing program, gone into Lesotho as well, into very far, quite isolated areas of Lesotho where book sharing has been integrated within communities through a collaboration, partnership with leaders, local leaders, traditional leaders within the area. Blanche, Wilmi, do you want to add to that?
No, just from our side, I would like to say we are in the rural area and we are delivering our programs also in far distances from each other. So we make use of the local clinic. We've got a very good relationship with the local clinic, but we also have the support from the farmers around us. Because we are a violence prevention organization and because it adds protection to the area that they live in and that they work in, they support the work that we do. So for us, that helps a lot. So we drive a lot to actually take our parenting facilitators, not just for the home visiting programs, but for the group programs as well. We would deliver it under a tree in a community. But we drive there, and yeah, so the local farmers support us and help us with that. In our area, there's not a tradition. Well, in the community that we work, we haven't worked with traditional leaders. We're mostly Afrikaans-speaking colored community, so we have adapted the Sinuvuyo, as you heard, to an Afrikaans program, and instead of using the rondavel as to show the building of the rondavel for the relationships, we are using the tree of support because we are in this area where there are a lot of trees and nature, and the rondavel doesn't have the significance that the trees does. So I just wanted to add that. Blanche?
I think Wilmi, you guys have covered that quite extensively. I think around many of our programs, if there has been quite a few discussions around more Western approach to things. But I think in our context, we were talking to parents when engaging with parents. It's not a hierarchy of coming to tell parents. It's always from a good enough parenting stance. We're here to enhance that and to say that some practices of putting your child onto your back, that is already bonding and attachment, and you're doing that. It's practical so that you can move and work and get things done, and then praising parents for that. So really enhancing what is already being done in communities with the aspects of strengthening that in the various programs from conception right through the life space. Yeah.
Thanks so much. We've got about 5 minutes left, so there's just enough time if someone's got one more question or a comment to be made. If you don't mind putting up your hand or speaking through your mic. Just also to let you know that Lauren has uploaded the 2 PowerPoint presentations in the chat. So if you need to access them, you can just click on them in the chat. Right, we seem to have a really well-informed audience, so I'm not going to pressure anyone else to ask any questions. So I just really like to ask the 3 speakers if you have any final words before we wrap up.
I saw somebody in the chat asked for parenting training. I think if they contact us through email, we would be able to give them the details of the members of the network. So there are different training opportunities. I can't remember who asked, but I think it was in Cape Town. So there are opportunities.
Great, thank you. Just sorry, a follow up on the PowerPoint presentations. A couple of people can't access it, so Lauren, if you don't mind just emailing it to people, the 2 presentations, thank you. Right, and also just thank you to the very positive comments that are coming out and all the links that are appearing within the chats, very helpful. We're coming close to the end of time, so I really just want to thank our 3 presenters, Wilmi, Blanche and Katharine, for really brilliant presentations. I think we all learned a lot listening to you, and we I certainly find your network really inspiring, and there was a definite need for it, and certainly wish you the best going forward. But I think it's also important that your work is hopefully going to be influential, because this is part of a process of designing an implementation strategy for the white paper on safety and security. And of course, as you know, the white paper on safety and security has a strong parenting component, so your particular work is really important here. And it's going to influence the work that we're doing with SaferSpaces in terms of promoting parenting work. So thank you so much for this very useful information. Do any of you would like to say one final word before I close this? Any of the presenters?
Just from me, thank you so much for the opportunity, Guy.
It's an absolute pleasure, and also thank you so much to GIZ who've put the funding together for these events to happen, and also thank you so much to the Civilian Secretariat for Police Services, because they're a key partner on this, and they're the key government implementing partner for the white paper on safety and security. So it's good to see them as part of this process too, and I'm sure they've also learned a lot from this presentation too. So thank you, everyone. As I say, lots of comments in the chat, so and lots of other links in the chat, so please have a look at those. Sorry, does anybody wanted to say something? Blanche, you want to say something, or Wilmi?
Thank you. I think I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity. You'll see in the chat group as well, Linda from Dippenaar has just shared a link also to just specify that there are 2 different projects within Dippenaar, the baby map project and then the blanket project are 2 separate projects, and so you can just learn a little bit more about that project. You can go into that link and then share that as well. She can share that with you.
Right.
Yeah, and from my side, thank you very much for everybody who attended.
Fantastic. Well, we are pretty much at time, so thanks to the presenters who presented, within a huge amount of detail in a very short space of time, and they did it exceptionally well. So thank you so much. We're going to have another webinar next week. It's going to be focusing on early interventions to prevent gender-based violence. We do have a couple of speakers confirmed, but we will be sending out the invitations and the notice about it fairly soon, probably early next week. So thank you to everyone for making the time for attending, and have a wonderful afternoon and weekend. So goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.